evening. I will not be waiting for people to join. I will get right into it because I don't want to be here more than 30 minutes. I know you value your time and I want to help you preserve it and utilize it well. So like you can see from the title, when you join, you will see that the title is Life Skills That You Don't Get Taught in School, Things That You Will Not Learn in School. And I don't intend to be here very long. And I shortlisted about 5. Okay. So I wrote some notes down so that we can have maximum use of our time. And just as we get into it, I just want to thank you for joining me today, whether you join the live now or you see this later. It is always such a delight for me to connect with you and chat with you and talk with you about these important issues. So a frequently asked question I get is, what is the mindpreneur? They're like, oh, that's an interesting name. What is it about? So before I get into today's topic, I'm just going to talk a bit about what the brand is. So the mindpreneur is basically a brand in the business of changing minds. We want to get to a point where we have people who live a holistic life, understanding who they are, their purpose, and where they want to go, right? This is what we're about. So we stand on 5 pillars: the mind, the body, your compass, the holy scriptures, or your spirituality, money, which is your fuel, and the relationships. I use an analogy of the car to illustrate the importance and how these 5 pillars work together, right? So the mind is sort of the powerhouse of your entire life, right? So every decision is made there. Every thought, every emotion, everything that we believe comes from what we put in our mind. So when you think about a car, you are thinking about the engine in a car. If you're not feeding your mind the right things, if you're not reading, if you're not taking care of your mind, the car won't go far, right? And then when we look at the body, our physical body, it is the vehicle. It houses everything else. It houses the mind. It houses our heart. It houses everything, and therefore you will need to take care of it as well. So the body is the vehicle. And then when we look at relationships, right, when the engine is not working and the body is beat down or other parts of the vehicle are not working very well, your car won't move. It may look good on the outside, right? But if the systems in the body are not working very well, it's no use, right? You can have like a Benz or whatever, but if the systems are not working and you can't start the car to get it from point A to point B, then it's of no use. And hence the relationships being the systems in our body, in our lives, our mentors, our families, our friends, and all that stuff. So we also have so I've talked about the mind, I've talked about the body, I've talked about the relationships, which are our systems. We also have the fuel, right? A car will not go anywhere if it doesn't have fuel. Or now, because there will be electric cars, it can't move if it's not charged. And that's how we should see money and finances in our lives. You don't want to be moving on E, right? So thanks, Shadrach. We will catch up soon. We have to finish our call. So yes, so when we talk about the fuel, you need to charge your vehicle or you need to fuel your car. You don't want to be running on E. You want to be running at a full tank so that, you can live that fulfilled life. And the last one is your compass. What is it that you believe? Because compass says, give us the direction for where we are going. And then when you think about direction these days, we have Google Maps and GPS, but the compass was so much easier to use. But it helps us find the direction for our lives. Where are we going? You need to know where you're going. What are your plans? Who do you want to be? How do you define success on the face of this earth, right? But also it may sound like a lot of pressure to try and balance these things, right? It's like 5 things. How do we balance them to have this fulfilled life that we are desiring, right? And that's where I come in, and that's what I do, right? To show you the places in your life and how that can be done. So also, again, you can't do these things perfectly at the same time. It's progress over perfection, right? It's progress. We do little things each day to become the people that we want to be. Thank you, Princess Barbie. It's always so good to have you. We follow the principle of Kaizen. It's progress over perfection. Little consistent steps every day to get to where you want to go. So that's about the mindpreneur. I believe in people defining their own success without looking at another person and then following through that definition. So that's about the mindpreneur and the values that we stand for and what we plan to do with this. Okay. So before we get into today's video, our guiding verse is Ecclesiastes. We chose Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 9, because the Mindpreneur is a brand that is faith-based personal development. I legit believe that the Bible is the best personal development book that has ever been written. Even if you took out all the spiritual stuff where, we have a Savior who died for us and that we're born sinners and in need of a Savior. Even if we took that out and you're like, but I'm not a Christian. If you're looking for a personal development book, I'm telling you, the Bible is your go-to. And so our Bible verse that is guiding us today is Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10. And it reads, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom." I find this verse very interesting because, we always hear the first part where they say, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. But what's even more interesting for me is the last part where it says, because where you are going, right? There's none of this. It's almost like King Solomon was saying, look, dude, you want to be tired because you'll be bored where you're going in death, right? That's not biblically correct, but it's just the sense in which it advises us to do your best while you can. And even before you die, when you are younger, you have more energy, you have more vitality, you have more strength to do what you can do. So before the days make you more weary, do whatever you find your hand to do it with all your might. And that's what we are about. Right. So whatever we find our hands to do, we need to do with all our might. And I feel like it slides very well into our topic for today, which is 5 skills that we are not taught in school. And yes, that's what we'll be talking about, and we will get right into it. So I feel like a very essential skill for me that I learned that I wasn't taught in school was the skill of before we get into the skill, I think we need to have a working definition. It's very easy, because there's so many definitions in the world. So we want to have a working definition when we get into the subject. So my working definition is the ability to do something well. Our skill definition for today is the ability to do something well. And in our country, when we think about skills, we're like, mechanics, catering, or tailoring, those are skills. Well, yes, those are skills as well, but we are working with the definition of the ability to do something well. And why I'm using these skills that I have brought today is to ensure that when we're getting into the workspace, they can play to our advantage. Okay. So there's certain skills that people develop outside of the education system that helps them succeed in life. And these are the ones I want to discuss today. The first one for me is the skill of volunteering. Okay. Volunteering well is a good ability because it can truly be a game changer. It was a game changer for me. Okay. So when I was in like second year of university, right? Not second year, no, I had already been quartered into third year. Third year of university at UNZA was the first time I had failed. I have told you this story countless times before. I'm an expert at failure. I failed. I came out of the ashes. God is good. The rest is history, right? If you want to hear more about that story, let me know and I will tell you. But the first time I failed, I think, was when I was in third year. I had failed a course, and I suddenly had found that I had a lot of time on my hands. And I've always wanted to be the person in wherever I'm placed, I always want to make a difference. If I spend some time with you, my goal has always been to leave you a better person, or if you're struggling with something, to comfort you. But when you leave my presence, I don't like for people to just leave not being, right? So when I had flunked that exam, it meant that I had to repeat the year doing only one course. Now, if you're familiar with law school or high demanding courses, you realize that dropping from 5 courses to 1 course is like, now what do I do with my time? So the question was, how do I make use of this time without wasting it? That's how I started volunteering. This is not even the first gig I had in volunteering, but I started teaching school-going kids at a school. It was a community school at the time. So I started to teach there, and I learned that I was very inadequate, and it was very frustrating because I could see the kids' needs, I could see what they needed, but I couldn't meet the need where they needed it the most. Okay, so that was really, really frustrating for me. But what was born out of that was a project that ended up being called the Givers Project Zambia, because I knew that I couldn't meet these kids' needs. I thought, you know what, why don't I create a platform where people who have these skills can come together, NGOs, donors, let them come together and exchange. Then the donors will be able to see the NGOs that have the need, and they'll be able to meet that need, right? So the Givers Project Zambia is a story for another day. It's a company limited by guarantee, which means that it is a company set up for charity purposes. It is still registered, but we stopped that on social media. Story for another day, but it is still running. We support widows and orphans and children who don't have dads. So that's how that project was born, from my frustration, but through volunteering, right? So what I found also about our education system in high school was that free labor had one of two extremes. It was either you are working as punishment, right? So you've been punished, go and dig a pit. Thank God for the doing away with corporal punishment, because guys, that was hell. Or there was like preventive maintenance, which it was just dubbed work. It's like you're doing free labor. It was frustrating, it was annoying and whatever, and students spent most of their time dodging. But if we had been told the importance of work without pay, I feel like we would have had more volunteers, at least in my generation. So a lot of time free labor is seen as a punishment, right? But volunteerism offers an opportunity for experience. And I'll give you another example. So when I continued to fail, right, I went and volunteered again. I went and volunteered for an NGO, and we used to go to prisons and support, juveniles and stuff like that. That became the experience that I partly needed for my future job, right? Even then, another example I can give is I went and volunteered. I had even passed my Ziale at this time, right? I had passed my Ziale, and law is the dream. When you're in school, you're like, oh, when I pass, I'm going to get into a fancy job and whatever. But by the time I was called to the bar, the jobs in the law field were scarce, okay? Jobs were really, really scarce. And so I said, you know what, I'm already a volunteer. I already have built this. I might as well, take on free cases, gain some experience, but also just make a difference in people's lives. Like I have said, I'm all about making a difference in people's lives. So I volunteered, and I think I worked a few months again. So that job that I had told you about when we used to do prison visits, plus this volunteer job, put me at an added advantage for the first job I was going to get straight after the bar. So volunteering is a very essential skill. What I can tell you about the importance of volunteering is, and how to do this well, is pick causes that you're passionate about so that you can commit to them. Things that you know that you can keep up, okay? When you're volunteering, pick a cause that you're passionate about or you know you are good at, that you can keep up, because a lot of institutions that require you to volunteer need the labor. So they need some of that consistent commitment. So don't just do things out of frustration, but do volunteer for the sake of your passion, because that's what will give you drive to keep it up, but also something you know that you're already good at and that you can support, because volunteers are needed in every field. Every field needs volunteers. So a second skill that I think we're not really taught in school is financial literacy. Can't overemphasize this. Financial literacy is very, very essential. Like I had told you in the introductory message that I began with, one of the pillars that we stand on is financial education, right? Financial literacy cannot be overemphasized, because we say money is a fuel that helps you get around, right? It helps you manage your life. So for me, success is, I always say this, success is not being wealthy, okay? Don't get me wrong. Success is not being Bill Gates. Success is not being Mark Zuckerberg. While they have the definition of it, they are not the absolute definition of what success is. A person who is, teaching in a rural community, that person is just as successful as Mark Zuckerberg, if that's a definition of success that they have decided for themselves, and their whole, and their mind, and their spirit, and their body is healthy. When these 5 pillars come together and you are whole, you are as successful. So now, again, I always say, whatever you have decided your definition of success is, you need to have a financial plan around it. So you can't decide that you want to be a volunteer for the rest of your life and then at the same time be pushing to drive a Jaguar. You know what I mean? If it's donated to you, that's fine. Or if you're able to work overnight in a side hustle to get that, that's fine. But again, remember that your body needs to rest, that your body needs to be in good health. So it's about balancing. So people who, for instance, have decided that they want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be the next Dangote, they want to be the next Mark or whatever, it's realistic for them to want to pursue those things. But when you decide what your definition of success is, make realistic choices around that. Where would you be able to afford to live if you decided you wanted to volunteer for the rest of your life? Where can you afford to live? Would you be okay with it? What car will you be able to drive without you losing your mind, your integrity, and your peace? So whatever your definition is, you have to make a financial plan around those things that you define success to be. So financial literacy is another thing. So we learn accounting in school, we learn balancing books. At Ziale, one of the courses that I did was accounting, but even then it wasn't like I can say, maybe it's an aspect of financial literacy, but it wasn't teaching me things like investing, looking forward, what are the different kinds of stock options that I have. So we're coming out of school with the mentality of being an employee and not being a business person, and it does us a disservice. So we're grateful for the skills that we learn at school, building us to have a job. But if you want to have a little more in life, you will have to learn financial literacy, and you have to be deliberate about. And the beauty is, we are now in a world that has a lot of information, and we can learn about what is available to us. So that was one. Number one, volunteerism. Be good at volunteering, because one, it will help you with networking. A lot of donors are found in NGOs. So if you want to meet people, volunteer. Good for networking, good for gaining experience, good for being a source of your passion as well. The next is learn financial literacy, because no matter what your definition of success is, finances will always be an issue. How are you going to eat? Where are you going to sleep? Where are you going to live? All those things are essential for your life. So learn some financial literacy. Another essential skill that we're not taught in school is communication. And today I wanted to hone in especially on conflict resolution. So one of the things that we're not taught in school, we learn so many things. Like, I don't know how many subjects I took in school, but communication was not dealt with for real life. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, conflict resolution skills. Those are essential because no matter where you find yourself in the home, whether as husband and wife or as siblings, in the workplace, as employee to employee, as boss to employee, there will be areas of conflict that arise. Some, and because I have worked in a lot of NGOs and also have experience with international NGOs, what you'll find is that the dynamics that are present there are cross-cultural issues. So what you see as intambi or traditions, others don't see them like that. The question is, how will you then blend into an institution where you have different cultures? How do you work together? Okay, so those are communication skills that are practical. So you need to learn communication skills. So 1, volunteerism. 2, financial literacy. 3, communication skills, and especially conflict resolution. Okay, so number 4 is reading. School, we were taught to read for the benefit of passing exams, not for the benefit of learning. I'm so sorry if I've misinterpreted what the education system in our country was trying to do, but I have to say, for me, the systems I have experienced from primary school to secondary school, university, masters, postgraduate, Ziali. Okay, maybe even Ziali tried, okay, to teach us things to know, because you have people's lives in your hands. So if you have a real life situation, how do you understand it? But still, when we're reading, it was to pass an exam. And for Ziali, I feel like you had to understand the lecturer's desire and what they wanted. It wasn't so much about my opinion in that situation if I wanted to help a person. So it was about, what does a lecturer want, and how can I pass this? How can I answer this question to pass this exam? But there's such high value that we must place on reading for growth, reading for self-development. And the only way we're going to do all these things like volunteerism, financial literacy, communication, and specifically conflict resolution, the only way we're going to learn this is if we have the skill of reading. There are a lot of people who are like, oh, I read as a hobby. This is something you do to pass time, and that's okay, and continue doing that. But you should be deliberate about picking up texts that when you read, they're not just for entertainment. History is good for us to make decisions moving forward and understanding, our society, but also pick up literature that teaches you skills, like I have said, real life skills like financial literacy, like like how to be a good listener, how to develop a pleasing personality, how to resolve conflict, and all that good stuff. So reading is another skill that is essential for society that we're not really taught in school. We had English literature in high school, but even then we're reading to pass an exam, and it was nice to read those books, the African books, and all of us remember Animal Farm from English literature. But we need to read literature that helps us for life in the workspace, in the work environment. For instance, the book Boundaries. How do you set boundaries? I have people who are in working institutions, and they're afraid to lose their jobs because they can't stand up and say no when they're being overworked, when they're being called to work after hours. I have principles. For instance, my work phone, it is either on silent when I'm at home or it stays at the office. Okay, similar with my work laptop. So unless there's an emergency, I do not work outside of my office hours. And generally as well, I haven't shared my personal line with a lot of my work colleagues because of boundaries and just protecting the space that is my home. I feel like being a woman, I have to be very deliberate about this, and being a wife and being a mom to my nephew when he comes, there's a lot of demand on you as a wife. You cook, you clean, and I'm not complaining. I love being a wife. I love being a woman of the home, and that's why I take it so seriously. So when you read a book like Boundaries, it helps you not to be pompous or to shout at your boss and say, I don't work after 8 or I don't work after 5 because it's my right. No, it helps you learn how to set healthy boundaries so that even the person on the other side doesn't feel insulted. Okay, it's not about going to your boss and say, hey, my contract says that, from 8 to 5 is the only time that I work. No. There's certain boundaries that you can lay in slowly, but if you do not read the books and do not learn the tactics, it's very difficult. Okay? Reading, another book I recently learned that was just mind-blowing was Atomic Habits. So maybe you are struggling with building a habit. Maybe in your heart you do genuinely have the desire to build a habit, but you don't know how to go about it. If you read a book like Atomic Habits, it gives you maybe 3 or 4 options about how you can build new, healthy, progressive habits. But like Jim Rohn says, the book that you do not read cannot help you. Okay, so reading is top tier. I should have even made reading number 1. It's an essential skill. And the last one, building character. And I feel like building character falls a lot under the pillar for me, which is the number 1. Okay, yes, number 1 pillar for me, the most important pillar for me. And each one of us can give different weights to the pillars. But the most important pillar for me is the compass pillar, the pillar that talks about our spiritual life, our guidance. Because a lot of what we define as integrity and good character is anchored on what we believe about our identity. Who do we believe we are? So I always tell people when they say, who is Wupe? The first thing I always tell people is that I am a child of God. That's my identity. That's who I am. And if I am a child of God, what does that mean as it relates to my character as a human being? How do I show up in the world? Okay? What does God expect of me? If I have a parent, when I was a child in my parents' home, they had certain standards that they had and rules and regulations for my upbringing. For instance, we couldn't come home after 18 hours. Okay. We couldn't watch TV beyond a certain time. We could only have gadgets at a certain age. We could only have certain friends. And when we go to visit certain homes, our parents needed to know those people's parents. And when we go there, they needed to know that we were there for a time. And what was the plan? That we were not inconveniencing other people's lives as well, where we visited. So it's the same thing as Christianity. When rules are put in place, they are not for the good of my parents. They are for my own good. There are a lot of times, like for instance, simple, like you can't eat ice cream every day. You can't even eat ice cream 5 times a week. Hell, you can't even eat ice cream 3 times a week. That's too much. That's too much sugar for you. It's not good for your health in the long run. So you can indulge in these things. But when my parents told me you can't eat ice cream every day, I could throw a fit. I could be upset about it. But those things were not for them. They were for me. If I don't eat ice cream every day, when they stop me, I can be mad about it. But ultimately, it was for my own good. So that is what character is about. Sometimes when people hear Christians say, oh, I don't drink, you hear people say, we're holier than thou. Okay? But you will find that it's beneficial for them because the person who says I don't drink maybe knows that they have the tendency for abuse, right? So they would rather stay away than indulge a little bit only for it to ultimately destroy them. So character is founded especially on who you believe you are. I believe I'm a child of God. So what does God expect of me? How does God expect me to relate with other people? For instance, the Bible says when we do work, we do it as unto the Lord, not as unto man. So when we show up on time to work, you're not showing up to please your boss. You have a higher power that you are submitted to. When you submit to your husband in a home, you are not submitting to your husband for your husband. I submit to my husband because I submit, the Bible says, as unto the Lord. So your integrity and your character, all those things are founded in your belief system on who you believe that you are, in your identity, whether it's as a Christian or whoever it is that you have defined yourself to be. Those are some of the things. I mean, recently we have seen the uproar in the media about, before I even get to the uproar in the media about the awards that just ended. Whenever we do something, this is something I've been hearing a lot lately. I heard it from Oprah and I can't remember who else, about when you set out to do something. So when I set out to start this brand of the Mindpreneur, what was my intention? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to receive from me what I plan about, go and exercise, eat healthy, pray and read your Bible, have good relationships. This is how you make money. That is what the plan looks like. But what you're going to receive from me, ultimately, when this work is done, is my intention. What is it that I set out to do? Did I just set out to sell you products that you will buy and I want to be rich? If that's my intention, you will feel it. Okay? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but as the time goes by, people will receive not what you plan, not what you show them. So you may be a musician, okay? And you may be talented. You may be a poet. You may be a teacher. You may be a lawyer like me, or you may be an engineer. But wherever it is that you show up to work, if your intention is selfish and it starts and it ends with you, eventually it will show in your work. Okay, so even me, with starting this Mindpreneur brand and trying to grow it, what will come out at the end of it is the energy of my intention. So if my goal is to make money, I will act on that intention because that is the foundation. So I am a child of God. My goal is to honor God. I am just a tool in God's hands ultimately. Okay, the other day I was having a chat with a very good friend of mine who was like, you know what, I'm so thankful. She didn't say I'm so thankful. She's like, oh, I enjoyed, the content you've been putting out in the last few days has been fire. Have you considered sponsoring the page? And I'm like, yeah, I have considered sponsoring the page, but I want to grow with the community. I want to know what your needs are. And within the brand of the Mindpreneur, my goal is to help you meet your needs as far as I can reach you. Always say it's not about the numbers. It's getting old. But ultimately, my point is, what is your intention at the end of the day? So when we talk about character and integrity, it anchors on who you believe you are. What is your identity? How do you define yourself? And when you show up in the world, what is your intention? And when you're not clear on what your intention is, even that will show to the world. And if your energy, your intention is just about making money, usually you seal your limits about how far you can go. But if your intention is to bring good in the world, it is to be kind, is to never let the chain of love break. Guys, there's this song that I really, really like. It's an old country song. It's called either Don't Let the Chain of Love Break or Never Let the Chain of Love Break. It's a story about a woman who has it's a story about a man who finds a woman who has a tire puncture on the road. And he helps this lady, and this lady tries to pay him And he just says to her, no, don't let the chain of love break. This lady then drives to a restaurant, finds a pregnant waitress, and she sees that this woman is working hard. And what can she really earn for a waitress on a waitress job to manage the bills of bringing a little one into the world? And when she's paying her bill, this rich woman who's driving a really good car, who had just been helped, slips excess money into the bill when it comes, and she doesn't stay to take the change, and she just writes a note and says, don't pay me back, don't worry, don't let the chain of love break, right? So this man, for example, set out to be kind. It wasn't about, let me help this person so that I can make an extra buck. It was someone is going through a tough situation. Let me help them. At the end of the song, we learn that that pregnant woman is the wife of that same man who helped the lady in need. And they found the cash that they needed to help them in their situation. And that's always, for me, a great illustration of the importance of your intention when you're going into the world. So we'll go back. Number one, volunteerism. That's a skill I had begun with, right? What is your intention even when you volunteer? The benefits are that, a lot of donor agencies are available when you go to these donor agencies. So the benefit of it is that you will make some good networks that will lead you in the next path for your career. But what is your intention? Your intention should be to do good, to leave some good in the world, because volunteerism has a lot to do with your legacy. You want that. So you may have the benefit of gaining experience. You may have the benefit of building great networks. But ultimately, when you volunteer, it should be about the good and the legacy you are building to make a life different, to change a life for the better. A lot of the time when you volunteer in a community school, in an NGO, or at an orphanage, these are children in need, with parents who cannot afford, or with no parents at all. So when you just go in to check the time, they can feel it, and you're already making them feel worse than they already feel, because they wonder, why did my life have to be this way? And when you volunteer, you have the opportunity to show this child that, there is good in the world, and I am that good. And even if you never get paid for it, even if you never get a job for it, you would have done something in that child's life. You would have touched that one life, and that's the most important thing. The other one we talked about now was the importance of getting financial literacy. Don't just gain financial literacy to be rich. People who are rich are great givers. Go and study the life of Warren Buffett. Go and study the life of Mark Zuckerberg. Go and study the life of Bill Gates. Go and study all of them. Rich people are givers. And when you earn to make a difference, remember, and especially like I said, when I talked about the importance of your identity as a child of God, remember, you are not given to hoard. You are given to extend yourself to other people. So earn so that the lives of people around you may be better. For me, my why has always been to help my parents have a better life, to help them have a life they deserve. I feel like my parents gave a lot of themselves, and I believe if they had been selfish and only invested in themselves, they would have been rich. They would have been very rich. But my parents have given of themselves above and beyond for people who have most times have been ungrateful and have insulted them. But that has never stopped them from giving and stretching themselves. In my mind, I'm like, if I was my parents, I would have probably given up at some point. But for all the years of my life, I have observed my parents be givers. Why? Because they understand that we are blessed to be a blessing. So financial literacy, again, remember, if you forget anything we talked about today or I talked about today, please remember that your intention is what will come out on the other side. So you may work hard, you may study hard, but when you have the right intention, you will find that it becomes more bearable, and ultimately that's what will come out, and that's what will reap you benefits. Having the right intention, whether as a volunteer, gaining financial literacy, growing in your character, growing in your spiritual life, all these things, the essential that we have talked about the 5 skills you won't learn at school, is have the right intention, and you will see it pay dividends. So whether you join the live now or you catch this later, I just want to thank you for taking the time to watch this and do build those skills, the skill to read, the skill to volunteer, the skill to gain financial literacy, the skill of communication, especially in conflict resolution and volunteerism as well. So this could be a part 1. There's so many skills that we don't learn when we're in school, but these are the 5 that I wanted to talk about today. And that is it for today. Thank you, Princess Barbie Sokolo, for always showing up. I'm so grateful. I appreciate you. And Shadrach, yeah, I wish I could stay. Unfortunately, I have a meeting starting now. Great points here I have just shared. Thank you so much. You're so kind. I appreciate that. Okay, I have to love and leave you and go and do the wife mother thing, which I love to do. And yeah, if you or when you do find this video and you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to leave them on here. But yeah, this has been Pupe. I'm out.